I should have known something was wrong the moment Tristan suggested dinner. Just the two of us. In 4 years of marriage to my daughter Camille, my son-in-law had never once invited me anywhere alone. Not for coffee, not for lunch, certainly not for an elegant dinner at Le Cygne, one of the most expensive restaurants in Greenwich. I thought it would be nice to strengthen our relationship, he'd said on the phone 3 days earlier, his voice carrying that practiced warmth I'd never quite trusted. You're important to Camille, which means you're important to me. I wanted to believe him. God help me. I wanted to believe that after 4 years, he was finally making an effort, that maybe my reservations about him had been nothing more than a mother's irrational protectiveness. So I said yes. I put on my favorite navy silk dress, the pearl earrings Theodore gave me for our 30th anniversary, and I let myself hope. That hope died the moment I saw his face across the white linen tablecloth. Tristan Kincaid was nervous, not the charming, slightly flustered nervous of a man trying to impress his mother-in-law. This was different. His jaw was too tight. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and every 30 seconds, without fail, he glanced at his phone like he was waiting for something. Or someone. The salmon here is exceptional, he said, not looking at the menu. Camille and I had it last month. How is Camille? I asked, watching his face carefully. I haven't spoken to her since Sunday. She's wonderful, busy with that new client in Westport. You know how she gets when she's deep in a project. I did know. My daughter had inherited my work ethic, if not my instinct for self-preservation. She threw herself into her interior design business with the same intensity I'd once devoted to building my gallery empire. The difference was that I'd learned to look up occasionally to notice when something wasn't right. Tristan wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, toward the front windows of the restaurant. Is everything all right? I asked. Perfect. He finally met my eyes, and something flickered there, something cold. Everything is absolutely perfect, Harriet. The waiter arrived with our wine. Tristan had ordered a bottle of Chateau Margaux without asking my preference, a $1,200 bottle. I remembered when Theodore and I had shared one on our anniversary in Paris. Tristan made perhaps $200,000 a year as a financial consultant, if that. Where did a man like that learn to order wine like this without blinking? I'd asked myself that question 100 times over the past 4 years. The watches that cost more than most people's cars, the custom suits, the weekend trips to places that didn't quite add up with his supposed client meetings. Camille never questioned it. She was too grateful to finally feel chosen, to have someone who made her feel special after years of believing she lived in my shadow. I should have questioned it more. I should have pushed harder. But every time I tried to express my concerns, Camille would look at me with those wounded eyes and ask why I couldn't just be happy for her. So I stopped asking. I smiled at holiday dinners. I wrote checks for the wedding. I pretended not to notice when Tristan's stories didn't quite add up. Tonight, I couldn't pretend anymore. I need to take this, Tristan said suddenly, his phone buzzing against the table. He hadn't even glanced at the screen before standing. Important client. I'll just be a moment. He walked toward the front of the restaurant, past the hostess stand, and stepped outside onto the sidewalk. Through the window, I watched him answer the phone. His posture changed immediately. The charming facade dropped. He stood straighter, harder, like a soldier receiving orders. 2 men approached him from a parked car I hadn't noticed before. They wore dark overcoats despite the mild September evening. One of them was tall, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head that gleamed under the streetlights. The other was shorter, wiry, with the kind of stillness that made my stomach clench. Tristan spoke to them. He gestured toward the restaurant, toward me. The tall one looked through the window. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I was in danger. "Excuse me, ma'am?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. An elderly gentleman had appeared beside my table, seemingly from nowhere. He was perhaps 70, with white hair and kind eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. He wore a tweed jacket that made him look like a retired professor. "I'm terribly sorry to disturb your dinner," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm going to do something strange, and I need you to trust me." Before I could respond, he took my hand and pressed something into my palm. Paper. Cash. I looked down. $300 bills. "Use the restaurant phone to call a taxi," he said, his lips barely moving. Tell them to wait in the alley behind the building, then go to the ladies' room. There's a window above the third stall. It's small, but you'll fit. Climb out into the alley. Get in the taxi. Leave. I don't understand, I breathed. The man you're dining with intends for you to die tonight. His eyes were steady, calm, absolutely certain. The men outside are here to make sure it happens. You have perhaps 3 minutes before he comes back inside. Please, go now. He straightened, smiled politely, as if we'd just exchanged pleasantries about the weather, and walked back to his own table 2 rows away. He picked up his wine glass and didn't look at me again. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. A stranger at a restaurant telling me my son-in-law wanted me dead? It was the plot of a bad movie, not something that happened to 57-year-old women who ran art galleries and organized charity luncheons. But then, I looked out the window again. Tristan was still talking to the 2 men. His body language had changed. He was nodding, agreeing to something. The tall one clapped him on the shoulder, and Tristan flinched. Actually flinched, like a man who was afraid. I thought about the car accident 8 months ago, the brakes that failed on a winding road in Litchfield County, the mechanic who said it was just wear and tear, nothing suspicious. I'd walked away with bruises and a totaled Mercedes, grateful to be alive. I thought about Theodore, my husband of 33 years, dead of a heart attack at 59, perfect health, no warning, just gone one morning, collapsed in his study. I thought about the way Tristan had started suggesting investment opportunities to me 6 months ago, the way he'd pushed for me to consolidate my accounts, the way he'd casually mentioned that managing finances was so complicated for someone your age. I was on my feet before I made the conscious decision to move. "Excuse me," I said to our waiter, keeping my voice steady through sheer willpower. "Is there a phone I could use? My cell died and I need to call a taxi." "Of course, ma'am." "Right this way." The walk to the hostess stand felt like it took hours. I kept expecting to hear Tristan's voice behind me, feel his hand on my arm. But when I glanced toward the window, he was still outside, still deep in conversation with those men. I called the taxi company. My voice didn't shake. I gave them the address of the alley behind the restaurant. 5 minutes, the dispatcher said. Maybe less. 5 minutes. I could survive 5 minutes. The ladies' room was at the back of the restaurant, down a short hallway lined with black and white photographs of old Greenwich. I pushed through the door and locked it behind me. My hands were trembling now, the adrenaline finally catching up. The third stall. The window was there, just as the stranger had said. It was small, perhaps 2 feet square, set high in the wall. I was 57 years old. I hadn't climbed through a window since I was 19, sneaking back into my college dormitory after curfew. I kicked off my heels. I climbed onto the toilet seat, then onto the tank. The window had an old-fashioned latch that took me 3 tries to open because my fingers were shaking so badly. But it opened, and beyond it, I could see the dim glow of the alley, smell the faint scent of restaurant garbage and exhaust. I pulled myself up and through that window. My silk dress tore. My knee scraped against the brick. I didn't care. I dropped down into the alley, landing hard enough to send a shock of pain through my ankles. The taxi was there. A yellow cab idling at the mouth of the alley, its headlights cutting through the darkness. I ran. Barefoot, bleeding, clutching $300 that a stranger had given me, I ran toward that taxi like my life depended on it. Because it did. "Where to?" the driver asked as I threw myself into the back seat. "Just drive. Please, just get me away from here." He must have seen something in my face, because he didn't ask questions. He just pulled away from the alley, turned onto the main road, and drove. I looked back through the rear window. I could see the front of Le Cygne, the warm glow of its windows, and I could see Tristan standing on the sidewalk now, looking around with an expression I'd never seen before. Panic. Pure, undisguised panic. The 2 men were running toward a black SUV parked at the curb. And for one terrible moment, as the taxi turned the corner and the restaurant disappeared from view, I wondered if they would follow. "Ma'am?" The driver was watching me in the rearview mirror. "You okay? You want me to take you to a hospital? Police station?" I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That a stranger at a restaurant told me my son-in-law was trying to kill me? That I climbed out a bathroom window because of a feeling? I had no proof. I had nothing but the word of a man I'd never met and an instinct I'd spent 4 years ignoring. No, I heard myself say. No police. Not yet. I gave him the address of a hotel in Stamford, far enough from Greenwich that I could think. I paid with the stranger's money and added the last of the cash in my clutch as a tip. The hotel room was anonymous, beige, exactly what I needed. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my reflection in the dark television screen. A 57-year-old woman in a torn dress, barefoot, mascara smudged from tears I didn't remember crying. What had just happened? My phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. Tristan. 5 missed calls. 3 text messages. Harriet, where did you go? Are you okay? I'm worried about you. Please call me. Camille is asking about you. Please let us know you're safe. Camille. My daughter. My only child. The reason I'd ignored every warning sign, every nagging doubt, every whisper of intuition that told me something was wrong. I couldn't call her. Not now. Not until I understood what was happening. But I could call someone else. I dug through my clutch until I found what I was looking for. A business card, old and worn, that I'd kept for reasons I couldn't quite explain. Theodore had given it to me years ago, back when he was alive, back when I thought we had decades left together. If anything ever happens to me, he'd said one night out of nowhere, call this number. Don't ask questions, just call. I'd laughed it off at the time. Theodore was always dramatic, always reading spy novels and imagining intrigue where there was none. But I'd kept the card anyway, tucked into the silk lining of my favorite clutch. The name on the card was Edmund Hartley. The title read, Consultant. There was no company name, no address, just a phone number. I dialed before I could talk myself out of it. It rang twice. Hello, Harriet, said a familiar voice. I've been expecting your call. It was him, the stranger from the restaurant, the man who had saved my life. How do you know my name? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Who are you? How did you know what was going to happen tonight? Those are excellent questions, Edmund Hartley said calmly, and I promise I'll answer all of them. But first, I need you to listen very carefully. The men who were waiting for you tonight are going to start looking for you. They have resources and they have motivation. You can't go home, you can't contact your daughter, and you absolutely cannot go to the police. Not yet. Do you understand? No, I said honestly. I don't understand any of this. You will. I know this is terrifying and confusing, and I know you have no reason to trust me. But I've spent 35 years investigating people like your son-in-law and the men he works for. Your husband Theodore found me for a reason, and right now, I'm the only person who can help you survive long enough to take them down. Theodore. My husband had known this man, had given me his card years before he died. What else had Theodore known? What secrets had he been keeping? There's a train station in Stamford, Edmund continued. Take the first Metro North to New Haven. I'll meet you there. Look for the coffee shop across from the station, the one with the green awning. I'll be waiting. How do I know I can trust you? I asked. There was a pause. When Edmund spoke again, his voice was softer. You don't. But your husband trusted me enough to keep my card for 5 years. And tonight, when every instinct told you to stay at that table and pretend everything was normal, you chose to climb through a bathroom window instead. You trusted your gut, Harriet. Trust it a little longer. He hung up. I sat there for a long moment, the phone still pressed to my ear. Outside, I could hear traffic, the distant wail of a siren, all the ordinary sounds of an ordinary night. Nothing about this night was ordinary. I was 57 years old. I had built a $30 million art empire from nothing. I had raised a daughter, buried a husband, survived everything life had thrown at me with grace and determination. But nothing had prepared me for this. Nothing had prepared me to discover that the man my daughter loved might be trying to kill me. I looked at my phone again. More messages from Tristan. A voicemail from Camille, her voice worried and confused. Mom? Tristan said you disappeared from dinner. He's really worried. Are you okay? Please call me. I wanted to call her back. I wanted to hear her voice, to tell her I loved her, to warn her about the monster she'd married. But Edmund was right. I couldn't contact her. Not until I knew more. Not until I had proof. Because without proof, I was just a crazy old woman making wild accusations, and Tristan would use that. He would twist it, manipulate it, turn my own daughter against me. He'd probably already started laying the groundwork, mentioning my confusion, my memory problems, my paranoia. I thought about the papers I'd signed last month. Something about updating my will, Tristan had said. Something about estate planning. I'd barely read them. I'd trusted him because Camille trusted him, because I wanted so badly to believe that my daughter had found happiness. What had I signed? The questions spiraled through my mind, each one darker than the last. But underneath the fear, underneath the shock and confusion, I felt something else stirring. Anger. Cold, clear, righteous anger. If Tristan Kincaid thought he could murder me and get away with it, he was about to learn exactly who he was dealing with. I hadn't built my empire by being naive or weak. I hadn't survived a first marriage to an abusive man at 23 by being passive. I had clawed my way up from nothing, fought for every dollar, earned every success, and I would be damned if I let some calculating sociopath take it all away. I washed my face in the tiny hotel bathroom. I cleaned the scrape on my knee with tissues and water. I straightened my torn dress as best I could and slipped back into my heels. Then I walked out of that hotel room, took a taxi to the Stamford train station, and bought a one-way ticket to New Haven. I didn't know what I would find there. I didn't know if Edmund Hartley was telling the truth or leading me into another trap. I didn't know if I would ever see my daughter again, or hold my future grandchildren, or sit in my garden on a summer morning with a cup of tea and the newspaper. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was done being afraid. I was done ignoring my instincts. And I was done pretending that everything was fine when every fiber of my being screamed that it wasn't. Tristan Kincaid wanted me dead, but I was still alive, and I intended to stay that way long enough to destroy him. The train pulled into the station at 10:47 p.m. I found a seat by the window and watched the Connecticut suburbs slide past in the darkness. Somewhere out there, my daughter was worried about me. Somewhere out there, my son-in-law was panicking, wondering how his carefully laid plans had gone wrong. Good. Let him panic. Let him wonder. Let him spend the night terrified that his secrets were about to come crashing down around him. Because they were. I would make sure of it. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I would start fighting back. Tonight, I just needed to survive. The train carried me through the darkness toward New Haven, toward Edmund Hartley, toward answers I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. But I would hear them anyway. I would learn everything. And then I would make Tristan Kincaid pay for every lie, every manipulation, every moment of fear he had caused me. He thought he was dealing with a helpless old woman. He thought my money and my age made me an easy target. He was wrong, and he was about to find out exactly how wrong he was. The coffee shop across from New Haven Station was nearly empty at midnight. A tired barista wiped down tables, and a young couple huddled over laptops in the corner, oblivious to anything but each other. And there, at a table by the window, sat Edmund Hartley. He looked different now. In the restaurant, he'd seemed like a harmless grandfather. Here, in the harsh fluorescent light, I could see the steel beneath the surface, the way his eyes tracked every movement in the room, the way he sat with his back to the wall, facing the door. "You came," he said simply. "Sit down. We have a lot to discuss." I sat across from him, my torn dress and scraped knee suddenly feeling very real. "Start talking. I want to know everything." Edmund nodded slowly. He pushed a cup of tea across the table toward me. "First, drink this. You're in shock, even if you don't feel it yet. The adrenaline is still masking it." I didn't want tea. I wanted answers. But my hands were trembling again, so I wrapped them around the warm cup and waited. "I was FBI for 35 years, Edmund began. Organized Crime Division. I spent most of my career tracking Eastern European syndicates. Money laundering, extortion, murder for hire. The kind of people who operate in shadows and make problems disappear." He paused. "One of those people is a man named Viktor Sorin, Ukrainian. Runs his operation out of Boston now, but his reach extends up and down the East Coast. What does this have to do with Tristan? Your son-in-law owes Viktor Sorin approximately $2.3 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. $2.3 million. How was that even possible? Gambling debts, Edmund continued, reading the question on my face. Tristan has a problem, has had one since his days at Wharton. He's good at hiding it. The charm, the confidence, the expensive suits. It's all a performance designed to make people trust him with their money. But underneath, he's drowning, has been for years. I thought about all the times Tristan had mentioned investment opportunities, the way he'd casually suggested I consolidate my accounts, the papers he'd had me sign. He wanted my money, I said slowly, to pay off his debts. Not just wanted, needed. Victor Sorin doesn't forgive debts, Harriet. He collects them, one way or another. When Tristan couldn't pay, Sorin gave him an alternative. Your fortune, transferred to him through Camille after your death. Insurance policies, inheritance, all of it funneling through a grieving widow who would lean on her husband for financial guidance. The tea had gone cold in my hands. I set it down carefully, afraid I might shatter the cup if I gripped it any tighter. How long has this been planned? Edmund's expression softened with something like sympathy. At least 2 years, possibly longer. I believe your husband Theodore discovered the truth about 3 weeks before he died. The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, suddenly certain I was going to be sick. Theodore knew? He hired a private investigator, a good one. He was building a case against Tristan, gathering evidence of the gambling, the debts, the connection to Sorin. He planned to confront Camille, show her the proof, convince her to leave before it was too late. But he died first. My voice sounded hollow, distant. Yes. Edmund reached into his jacket and withdrew a manila envelope, worn at the edges. Theodore came to me 2 weeks before his heart attack. We'd met years earlier, when I was investigating a case that touched one of his gallery clients. He trusted me. He asked me to hold on to this in case anything happened to him. He slid the envelope across the table. My name was written on the front, in Theodore's handwriting. I should have contacted you sooner, Edmund said quietly. But I needed to be certain. I needed more evidence before I could prove what I suspected, that Theodore's death wasn't natural. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, bank statements, surveillance reports, and a letter, folded carefully, Theodore's familiar script covering both sides of the page. My dearest Harriet, it began. If you're reading this, it means I failed to protect you. I'm so sorry. I couldn't read more. Not yet. Not here, in this fluorescent-lit coffee shop with a stranger watching me discover that my husband had been murdered. The heart attack, I managed. How? There are drugs that can induce cardiac arrest without leaving traces in a standard autopsy. Sorin's people have used them before. I can't prove it definitively, but the timing is too convenient to be coincidence. Theodore was getting close to exposing everything. He died before he could. I pressed my palm flat against the letter, feeling the paper beneath my fingers. Theodore had known. He'd tried to save me, and it had cost him his life. The car accident, I said suddenly. 8 months ago. My brakes failed. I know. I've been watching you since Theodore died, keeping my distance, gathering information. When you survived the accident, I started investigating the mechanic who serviced your car. He received a cash payment of $15,000 2 weeks before your brakes failed. The money came from an account connected to one of Sorin's shell companies. 2 attempts. They had tried to kill me twice, and I hadn't even known. Why tonight? Why the restaurant? Because you've become too expensive to keep alive. Tristan's debts have grown. Sorin is losing patience. And there's something else. Edmund leaned forward slightly. 3 weeks ago, Tristan filed paperwork to have you declared mentally incompetent. He's been telling people you're confused, that you have memory problems, that you've become paranoid and unstable. He's laying the groundwork to take control of your finances through Camille. I thought about the concerned looks I'd noticed recently. Friends asking if I was feeling all right. My doctor suggesting I might want to see a neurologist. Small things I'd dismissed as normal aging. Tristan had been poisoning my reputation for months. The dinner tonight was supposed to be the final step, Edmund continued. You would leave the restaurant with Tristan. There would be an accident on the way home. This time, you wouldn't survive. Camille would inherit everything, devastated, but trusting her husband to handle the details. Within 6 months, Sorin would have his money, Tristan would be free, and you would be nothing but a sad story about a wealthy widow who died too young. I sat with that for a long moment. The clinical precision of it, the cold calculation required to plan a murder over dinner, to kiss your mother-in-law's cheek, and order expensive wine while waiting for the men outside to finish the job. How did you know, I asked, that it was happening tonight? I have sources. People who owe me favors from my years with the Bureau. One of them heard about the job. A wealthy woman in Greenwich, contract already paid. When I learned Tristan had made dinner reservations at Le Cygne, I put it together. You could have warned me earlier. Would you have believed me? Edmund's gaze was steady, unblinking. A stranger calling to tell you your son-in-law is a murderer? You would have thought I was insane. You might have mentioned it to Camille, who would have told Tristan, and he would have adjusted his plans. I couldn't risk it. I needed to catch them in the act. I needed you to see those men with your own eyes. He was right. I hated it, but he was right. If someone had called me yesterday with this story, I would have dismissed them as a lunatic. I might even have told Camille about the strange, paranoid call I'd received, and then I would be dead. What happens now, I asked. Now we build a case. I have evidence, but not enough for a conviction. We need more. We need documentation of Tristan's debts, his connection to Soren, his role in Theodore's death. We need bank records, communications, testimony from people inside Soren's organization. That could take months. It could. But you have something that makes you valuable, Harriet. You have money, connections, and a legitimate reason to be investigating your son-in-law. People will talk to a concerned mother-in-law. Doors will open for you that would stay closed to law enforcement. I understood what he was suggesting. He wanted me to help him take down Tristan and Soren, not just survive, but fight back. And Camille? My voice cracked on her name. She's pregnant, Edmund, 2 months along. She hasn't told anyone yet, but I know my daughter. I can see the signs. Edmund's expression flickered. I didn't know that. If we do this, if we expose Tristan, it will destroy her. She loves him. She thinks he's the best thing that ever happened to her. Finding out the truth will break her heart. Finding out the truth will save her life. Edmund's voice was gentle but firm. Tristan sees Camille as a means to an end. As long as she's useful, she's safe. But once your money is gone, once Soren has been paid, what value does she have? She becomes a liability, a witness to financial crimes, a loose end. The horror of it washed over me. My daughter, my only child, married to a man who would eventually see her as a problem to be solved. I won't let that happen. The words came out fierce, absolute. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, I won't let him hurt her. Edmund nodded slowly. I believe you. Theodore believed it too. That's why he came to me. That's why he spent his last weeks trying to protect both of you. He tapped the envelope still sitting between us. Read his letter. Understand what we're fighting against. And then, when you're ready, we'll start planning. I gathered the envelope carefully, pressing it against my chest like a shield. Where do I go tonight? I can't go home. I have a place, a house on Cape Cod that isn't connected to my name. You'll be safe there while we work. I'll drive you. I stood, my legs steadier than I expected. The shock was fading, replaced by something harder, something that felt like purpose. Edmund. I waited until he met my eyes. Why are you doing this? You're retired. You have no obligation to help me. He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I had a daughter. We lost touch years ago. My fault mostly. The job consumed everything. By the time I realized what I'd sacrificed, it was too late. He looked past me, toward some memory I couldn't see. When Theodore came to me, when he talked about you and Camille, about how much he loved his family, I saw a chance to do something right, to protect what another man couldn't. It wasn't a complete answer, but it was honest. And right now, honesty was more valuable than gold. Thank you, I said, for the restaurant, for the warning, for giving me a chance to fight. Edmund stood, placing a $20 bill on the table. Don't thank me yet. The hard part hasn't started. He was right about that too. We walked out into the New Haven night, two strangers bound together by circumstance and loss. Somewhere in Greenwich, my daughter was sleeping next to a monster. Somewhere in Boston, Victor Soren was learning that his carefully laid plans had failed. And somewhere inside me, the woman I used to be was waking up. The woman who had survived an abusive first husband at 23. the woman who had built an empire from nothing. The woman Theodore had loved for her strength, her determination, her refusal to surrender. Tristan Kincaid thought he was hunting a helpless old woman. He was about to discover he'd awakened something far more dangerous. The house on Cape Cod was nothing like I expected. A modest, shingled cottage tucked behind dunes, invisible from the main road, with salt-weathered shutters and a porch that faced the Atlantic. Edmund had owned it for 30 years, he told me, purchased under a trust that couldn't be traced to his name. His wife had loved it here. They'd planned to retire together, spend their final years watching the ocean. She'd died of cancer 7 years ago. He still came every spring to open the windows and remember. I didn't sleep that first night. I sat in a faded armchair by the window, Theodore's letter in my lap, and read his words over and over until I'd memorized every line. My dearest Harriet, if you're reading this, it means I failed to protect you. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I wanted to be certain before I destroyed Camille's happiness. Now I'm afraid I've waited too long. Tristan is not who he pretends to be. He's drowning in gambling debts to dangerous people. I believe he married Camille for access to our money, and I believe he intends to take it by any means necessary. I've hired an investigator. I've gathered evidence. But I'm worried that I'm being watched. If something happens to me, find Edmund Hartley. He knows everything. He'll help you. Please forgive me for keeping secrets. I was trying to protect you both. Tell Camille I loved her more than she ever knew. And tell yourself the same thing, my darling. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. All my love. Forever. Theodore. He'd known. My husband had spent his final weeks carrying this terrible knowledge alone, trying to protect us, and it had killed him. The guilt I felt was suffocating. All those times I'd dismissed my own instincts about Tristan. All those moments when I'd chosen peace over truth. Theodore had been fighting a battle I didn't even know existed. I would finish what he started. I owed him that much. The first week at the cottage was dedicated to planning. Edmund spread his files across the kitchen table. Years of research into Victor Sorin's organization. Photographs, financial records, intercepted communications. The scope of it was staggering. Sorin runs his operation like a corporation, Edmund explained. Multiple layers of insulation between himself and the actual crimes. He has legitimate businesses, real estate, import companies, all generating clean money that mixes with the dirty. Getting to him directly is nearly impossible. But Tristan is different. Tristan is exposed. How so? He's desperate and sloppy. The gambling debts have made him reckless. He's been cutting corners, leaving trails he doesn't realize exist. If we can document his connection to Sorin, prove the financial crimes, tie him to Theodore's death, he'll flip. Men like Tristan always flip when they're facing prison. He'll give us Sorin to save himself. It was a solid strategy. Cold, calculated, exactly what was needed. What do you need from me? Edmund slid a folder across the table. Your financial records. Everything Tristan has touched. Every document you've signed in the past 4 years. Bank statements, investment portfolios, insurance policies. I need to see what he's already taken and what he was planning to take. I spent the next 3 days on the phone with my accountant, my lawyer, my financial advisor. I told them I was doing a comprehensive review of my estate, nothing unusual for a widow approaching 60. They sent everything. What I found made me sick. Tristan had been busy. In the past 18 months, he'd convinced me to sign documents that gave him power of attorney over 2 of my investment accounts, just for convenience. He'd added himself as a beneficiary on a life insurance policy I didn't remember updating. He'd moved nearly $400,000 from one of my trusts into an account that required his co-signature for withdrawals. He was patient, Edmund observed, reviewing the documents. Small moves, nothing that would trigger alarm bells. Another year, maybe 2, and he would have had control of everything without ever raising suspicion. And then he would have killed me. Yes, once he had legal access to your assets, your death would simply accelerate the timeline. Camille would inherit, but Tristan would control. He could pay off Sorin and disappear with whatever was left. I stared at the papers spread before me, all those signatures I'd given so carelessly. Trust. That's what it came down to. I had trusted my daughter's judgment. I had trusted that love meant something, and Tristan had exploited that trust with surgical precision. Can we undo this? Some of it. The power of attorney can be revoked. The beneficiary changes are more complicated, but not impossible. The real problem is doing it without alerting Tristan. The moment he realizes you're onto him, he becomes unpredictable. I thought about my daughter. Pregnant, trusting, completely unaware of the danger she was in. Every day that passed was another day she spent next to a man who had helped murder her father. I need to see her, I said. Camille, I need to know she's safe. Edmund shook his head slowly. That's exactly what Tristan expects. He's watching your house, monitoring your friends, waiting for you to surface. The moment you make contact with Camille, he'll know where you are. Then what am I supposed to do? Just hide here while my daughter sleeps next to a murderer? For now. Yes, Edmund's voice was gentle but firm. I know it's hard, but Camille is safer not knowing. As long as Tristan believes you're the target, he has no reason to hurt her. She's his access to your money. He needs her. The logic was sound. I hated it, but it was sound. 2 weeks passed, then 3. I fell into a rhythm at the cottage. Mornings spent reviewing evidence with Edmund. Afternoons walking the beach alone. Evenings reading Theodore's letter until the words blurred. I learned to cook simple meals in the small kitchen. I learned the patterns of the tides, the calls of the seabirds, the particular quality of light at sunset. And slowly, carefully, we built our case. Edmund's contacts in the FBI were helpful, but cautious. The agent handling the Sorin investigation, a woman named Rachel Torres, agreed to meet with us privately. We drove to Hartford on a gray Tuesday morning, sat in her cramped office, and laid out everything we had. This is good, she said, flipping through the documents. Better than good. But it's not enough for an arrest. We need direct evidence of the conspiracy to commit murder. We need Tristan on record, admitting his role. How do we get that? Torres looked at me with careful assessment. We would need someone on the inside, someone Tristan trusts enough to speak freely around. Camille, I said immediately. If she knew the truth, she could get him to talk. Too risky. She's emotionally compromised, pregnant, and has no training. If she confronted him or reacted wrong, he could panic. People have died when targets panic. Then who? Torres exchanged a glance with Edmund. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication I couldn't read. There might be another way, Edmund said slowly, but you're not going to like it. I waited. Tristan has been telling everyone you're mentally unstable, confused, paranoid, possibly developing dementia. He's laid the groundwork for months. What if we used that against him? I don't understand. What if you reappeared? Not hiding, not fighting, but seemingly broken. Confused, frightened, willing to believe you imagined the whole thing. What if you went home and let Tristan think he'd won? The idea was repulsive. Pretend to be weak? Pretend to be losing my mind? Let Tristan believe his manipulation had succeeded? But even as I recoiled, I understood the strategy. If Tristan thought I was no longer a threat, he would relax. He would make mistakes. He would say things he shouldn't, believing I was too addled to understand or remember. You want me to be bait. I want you to be a weapon, Edmund corrected. A weapon that looks like a victim. I thought about it for 3 days. I walked the beach until my legs ached, turning the plan over in my mind. It was dangerous. If Tristan suspected anything, if he realized I was gathering evidence against him, he would act, and this time there would be no stranger at a restaurant to save me. But doing nothing was also dangerous. Every day I hid, Tristan's position grew stronger. Every day I stayed silent. My daughter drifted further into his control. On the 4th day, I made my decision. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Edmund nodded. Name them. First, I want protection. Real protection, not just phone calls and check-ins. Someone watching the house, ready to intervene if things go wrong. Already arranged. Torres has agreed to assign 2 agents to surveillance. Unofficial, off the books, but they'll be there. Second, I want a way to communicate with you that Tristan can't detect. If I find something, I need to be able to pass it along without raising suspicion. We'll set up a system. Dead drops, coded messages, old-fashioned but effective. Third, I paused, making sure he understood the weight of what I was about to say. If it comes down to a choice between the case and my daughter's safety, we choose Camille. I don't care if Sorin walks free. I don't care if we never get justice for Theodore. If Camille is in danger, we pull the plug immediately. Edmund was quiet for a long moment. Agreed. We spent the next week preparing. I learned how to wear a wire, how to position myself for optimal recording, how to steer conversations toward incriminating topics without seeming suspicious. Edmund coached me on behavior, the subtle signs of cognitive decline that would make my performance believable. Don't overact, he warned. Confusion is quiet, not dramatic. Repeat questions you've already asked. Lose your train of thought mid-sentence. Forget small details like what day it is or where you put your keys. Let Tristan fill in the gaps. Let him explain things to you like you're a child. It went against every instinct I had. I had spent my entire adult life proving my competence, my intelligence, my capability. Now I would pretend to lose all of it. But I could do this. For Camille, for Theodore, for myself. On a crisp October morning, exactly 6 weeks after I'd climbed through that bathroom window, I called my daughter. "Mom?" Camille's voice was thick with tears. "Oh my God, Mom, where have you been? We've been so worried. The police found your car at the train station. They thought something terrible had happened. Tristan has been going crazy trying to find you." "I'm sorry, sweetheart." I let my voice tremble, let the exhaustion and fear I'd been hiding seep through. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I got confused, I think. I've been staying with a friend, trying to clear my head. I think I might be sick, Camille. I think something is wrong with me." The lies tasted like ash in my mouth, but my daughter's sob of relief told me they were working. "Come home, Mom, please. We'll take care of you. Tristan and I will figure this out together." "Okay, baby, I'm coming home." Tristan was waiting when I arrived. He stood on the front porch of my Greenwich home, his face arranged in an expression of profound concern. He rushed forward as my taxi pulled up, opening the door himself, taking my arm with gentle solicitude. "Harriet, thank God. We've been so worried about you." I looked at him, this man who had killed my husband, who had tried to kill me, who was even now calculating how to finish what he'd started, and I let my eyes go vague, confused, slightly lost. "Tristan? Where's Camille?" "She's inside, making tea. She's been beside herself. We all have." He guided me toward the door, his hand firm on my elbow. "What happened, Harriet? Where did you go?" "I don't remember exactly. I was at the restaurant, and then I was scared, and I just needed to get away. I think I might have had an episode of some kind. My doctor mentioned something about stress-related confusion after Theodore died." The lie came easily now. I saw the flash of satisfaction in Tristan's eyes, quickly hidden. He thought it was working. He thought his campaign to discredit me had broken something in my mind. "That's completely understandable," he said smoothly. "You've been through so much. Losing Theodore, all the stress of managing the estate. It's only natural that your mind would need a break." I let him lead me inside. I let him seat me in my own living room like an invalid. I let Camille fuss over me, tears streaming down her face, while Tristan watched with barely concealed triumph. And underneath my performance of frailty, underneath the vague eyes and the hesitant voice, I was memorizing everything. The way Tristan's phone buzzed twice, and he stepped away to answer. The coded language he used, talking about the schedule and our mutual friend. The way his mask slipped when he thought I wasn't watching, revealing the cold calculation beneath. I had become exactly what Edmund described, a weapon that looked like a victim. The first week home was exhausting. I maintained my performance constantly, never knowing when Tristan might be watching. I asked the same questions multiple times. I forgot appointments. I wandered into rooms and couldn't remember why. Camille was heartbroken. I could see it in her eyes, the grief of watching her mother decline. She took me to doctors, specialists, sat through neurological exams with her hand gripping mine. The doctors found nothing wrong, of course. They suggested stress, suggested therapy, suggested patience. Tristan suggested power of attorney. "Just as a precaution," he said one evening, the three of us gathered in my living room, "so that if you have another episode, we can make sure your affairs are handled properly. It's for your own protection, Harriet." I let my face crumple with confusion and fear. "I don't know. I just don't know. It's all so overwhelming." "You don't have to decide tonight." He patted my hand in a gesture that made my skin crawl. "We'll talk about it more when you're feeling stronger." When he left the room to take a phone call, I caught Camille's eye. Sweetheart, can I ask you something? Of course, Mom. Anything. Are you happy? With Tristan, I mean. Is he good to you? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She blinked, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Doubt, uncertainty. But then she smiled, and the mask was back. Of course I'm happy. Tristan is wonderful. He loves me so much. Good. I squeezed her hand. That's all I've ever wanted for you. Someone who loves you the way your father loved me. I saw her eyes glisten at the mention of Theodore. My daughter had adored her father. She'd been shattered by his death, vulnerable and grieving when Tristan swept in with his charm and his promises. He'd targeted her deliberately. He'd known exactly when to strike. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I retrieved the small recorder Edmund had given me. It was disguised as a lipstick case, activated by a twist of the cap. I'd been carrying it everywhere, capturing every conversation, every phone call, every whispered exchange. I listened back to Tristan's call from earlier. Most of it was mundane, scheduling, work talk. But at the end, there was something else. She's home, completely broken, just like we expected. The doctors can't find anything wrong, but that works in our favor. Give me another month to get the legal pieces in place, and then we can move forward with the original plan. Original plan. My death, dressed up as a tragic accident or sudden illness. I had 4 weeks. 4 weeks to gather enough evidence to destroy him. The clock was ticking, and I could hear every second. The breakthrough came on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 19 days after I'd returned home. Tristan had grown comfortable. My performance was so convincing that he'd stopped being careful around me. He took phone calls in the next room instead of stepping outside. He left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he showered. He spoke freely with Camille about finances, about plans, about the future he was building on the foundation of my money. I recorded everything. Hours of conversations, fragments of phone calls, snippets of documents I photographed when no one was looking. Edmund reviewed each piece, building a case that grew stronger every day. But we still didn't have what we needed. We had circumstantial evidence, financial irregularities, suspicious patterns. We didn't have proof of murder. We didn't have Tristan admitting what he'd done to Theodore. Then I found the safe deposit box key. I was putting away Tristan's dry cleaning. He'd asked me to do it, testing my compliance, seeing how far my apparent confusion would let him push. I was hanging his suits in the closet when I noticed a small tear in the lining of his jacket pocket. And inside that tear, hidden where no one would think to look, was a key. Safe Deposit Box 347, First National Bank of Hartford. I photographed it, replaced it exactly as I'd found it, and called Edmund that night from the bathroom with the water running. Hartford, he said immediately. That's outside his usual territory. He's keeping something there he doesn't want found. Can we access it? Not legally, but I have contacts at the bank. Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. I maintained my performance, smiled vaguely at Tristan's condescending explanations, let Camille help me with tasks I could have done in my sleep. Every moment felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. On Saturday morning, Edmund called. Meet me at the coffee shop in New Haven, same place as before. Come alone and make sure you're not followed. I told Camille I was visiting an old friend from my gallery days. She offered to drive me, but I insisted on taking a taxi. The concern in her eyes broke my heart, but I couldn't waver. Not now. Not when we were so close. Edmund was waiting at the same table by the window, but this time, he wasn't alone. Agent Torres sat beside him, her expression grave. We got into the box, Edmund said without preamble. What we found changes everything. He slid a folder across the table. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, medical records, and a small vial with a pharmaceutical label I didn't recognize. The vial contained traces of potassium chloride, Torres explained. In the right dosage, injected into muscle tissue, it causes cardiac arrest that's virtually undetectable in a standard autopsy. It's the same compound we've seen in 3 other deaths connected to Soren's organization. I stared at the vial. Such a small thing, such an ordinary-looking object to have killed my husband. There's more, Edmund said quietly. The medical records are Theodore's. From a private clinic in Boston. 2 weeks before he died, someone scheduled a physical examination under his name and insurance, but the signature on the consent forms doesn't match his handwriting. We had it analyzed. It's Tristan's. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table, fighting to stay upright. He posed as Theodore? To get access to his medical information, weight, heart condition, medications. Everything he needed to calculate the right dosage. Torres's voice was clinical, detached, the way professionals speak when describing horrors they've seen too many times. We also found records of the payment to the mechanic who tampered with your car, cash withdrawal from an account Tristan controls, same day the work was done. I looked at the evidence spread before me. Months of fear and suspicion finally confirmed in black and white. My husband had been murdered, deliberately, coldly, by the man my daughter loved. Is it enough? My voice came out hoarse. To arrest him? Torres and Edmund exchanged a glance. It's enough to bring charges, but Soren is still insulated. Tristan could claim he was acting alone, try to protect his benefactor in exchange for help with legal defense. We want them both. Then what do you need? Tristan talking. On record, clearly, about Soren's involvement. If we can prove the conspiracy goes beyond your son-in-law, we can bring down the entire network. I thought about what they were asking. One more performance. One more conversation with the man who had destroyed my family. I'll do it. Harriet, Edmund's voice carried a warning. This is dangerous. If he suspects anything, if he realizes the confused old woman act was exactly that, an act, he'll react. We don't know what he might do. I know exactly what he might do. He'll try to kill me. He's been trying for over a year. I straightened in my chair, feeling something settle inside me. Resolve, purpose, the same fire that had built my empire from nothing. But he won't succeed, because I'm not the victim he thinks I am. I never was. Torres studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. We'll wire you. Full surveillance team outside the house. The moment he incriminates himself, we move in. And Camille? We'll have agents ready to secure her safety before the arrest. She won't be in danger. I gathered the photographs, the medical records, all the evidence of Tristan's betrayal. I would carry it with me. And tonight, I would use it. One more thing, I said. When this is over, when Tristan is in custody, I want to be the one to tell Camille. Not the FBI, not the news. Me. She deserves to hear the truth from her mother. Torres hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. I left the coffee shop with the folder tucked under my arm and a wire taped to my chest. The drive back to Greenwich felt different. The landscape I'd known my whole adult life seemed sharper somehow, more vivid. I thought about Theodore, about the letter he'd written, the warnings he'd tried to give, the battle he'd fought alone because he loved us too much to burden us with the truth. He died protecting us. Now it was my turn to finish what he started. The sun was setting as my taxi pulled up to the house. Golden light spilled across the lawn, catching the windows and turning them to fire. It was beautiful. This home Theodore and I had built together. This life I'd fought so hard to create. Tristan's car was in the driveway. He was home, waiting. I paid the driver, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward my front door. Tonight, the performance would end. Tonight, Tristan Kincaid would learn exactly who he'd been trying to destroy. And tomorrow, my daughter would finally know the truth. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Too quiet. The kind of silence that feels deliberate, like someone is holding their breath. Camille? I called out, keeping my voice soft, uncertain. The confused old woman returning home. Tristan? I'm back. No answer. I moved through the foyer, past the living room where Theodore and I had spent countless evenings reading by the fire, past the dining room where we'd hosted holiday dinners, Camille's laughter filling the space. Every room held memories. Every corner whispered of the life we'd built, a life Tristan had tried to steal. I found him in Theodore's study. He was sitting behind my husband's desk, in my husband's chair, going through papers I recognized as my financial statements. The arrogance of it took my breath away. He didn't even look up when I entered. Harriet. Good, you're home. His voice was casual, dismissive. Camille ran out to pick up dinner. We need to talk. Of course. I settled into the chair across from him, the same chair where I'd sat countless times discussing art acquisitions with Theodore. The wire pressed against my skin, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Somewhere outside, agents were listening, waiting. What did you want to talk about? Tristan finally looked at me. His eyes moved over my face, assessing, calculating. I kept my expression vague. slightly confused, the mask I'd worn for weeks. "I've been reviewing your accounts," he said. "There are some changes we need to make. For your protection, of course, given your recent episodes." "Changes?" "The power of attorney we discussed. I've drawn up the paperwork. It's really the safest option for everyone." He slid a document across the desk. "I just need your signature." I looked at the paper without touching it. My name was already printed at the bottom, waiting for my signature to complete Tristan's control over everything I owned. "I don't know," I said slowly. "It all seems so complicated. Theodore always handled these things." "I know. That's why I'm here now, to help you the way Theodore would have wanted." The mention of my husband's name on his lips made something snap inside me. The careful performance I'd maintained for weeks cracked, and underneath it, the anger I'd been suppressing roared to life. But I held on. Not yet. I needed more. "You've been so kind to us," I said. "To Camille and me. After Theodore died so suddenly, I don't know what we would have done without you. That's what family is for. It was such a shock, his heart attack. He was always so healthy. The doctors couldn't explain it." Something flickered in Tristan's eyes. Caution. Suspicion. But my face remained placid, confused, and after a moment, he relaxed. "These things happen," he said smoothly. "No one can predict when their time will come." "No, I suppose not." I paused, letting the silence stretch. Although, I did find something strange the other day. I was looking through some of Theodore's old papers, trying to organize things. You know how confused I get. And I found receipts from a clinic in Boston, dated just a few weeks before he died. The change in Tristan was immediate. His shoulders tensed, his jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Theodore traveled a lot for the gallery. He probably had a routine checkup. That's what I thought. But the signature on the forms wasn't his handwriting. I tilted my head, letting my eyes go wide and innocent. "Isn't that strange?" "Harriet." Tristan's voice had an edge now. "You're confused. You've been under a lot of stress. These episodes you've been having, they're affecting your memory, your perception." "Maybe you're right." I nodded slowly. "I do get so confused these days. Like last week, when I found that key in your jacket pocket, the one to the safe deposit box in Hartford. I couldn't remember why you'd have something like that." The color drained from Tristan's face. "What did you say?" "The key. To box 347 at First National Bank." I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder Torres had given me. I was curious, so I had someone look into it for me. And they found the most interesting things. I laid the photographs on the desk, one by one. The vial, the medical records, the payment receipts. Tristan's eyes followed each document, his composure crumbling piece by piece. "Where did you get these? Does it matter?" I stood slowly, and for the first time in weeks, I let him see me. The real me. Not the confused old woman he'd been manipulating. Not the helpless victim he'd planned to murder. Harriet Wyndham, the woman who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd survived an abusive husband at 23, who'd raised a daughter and buried a husband and endured more pain than he could possibly imagine. What matters is what they prove. That you killed Theodore. That you tried to kill me. That you've been planning to steal everything I have and leave my daughter with nothing. Tristan rose from the chair, his charm evaporating like morning fog. Underneath was something cold and desperate, a cornered animal calculating its options. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've known for weeks. Did you really think I was losing my mind, Tristan? Did you really believe your little whisper campaign had broken me?" I laughed, and the sound startled him. "I've been watching you, recording you, building a case that's going to put you in prison for the rest of your pathetic life. You're wearing a wire." It wasn't a question. His eyes dropped to my chest, as if he could see through my blouse to the device underneath. "The FBI is outside right now. They're listening to every word. So here's your chance, Tristan. Your one opportunity to tell the truth before they come through that door." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked steadily, marking the seconds. Then Tristan lunged. He moved faster than I expected, crossing the space between us in 2 strides. His hand closed around my wrist, yanking me toward him, and I felt something cold press against my throat. A letter opener. Theodore's letter opener. The silver one I'd given him for our 20th anniversary. "You think you're clever?" Tristan hissed in my ear. "You think you've won? I have nothing left to lose, Harriet. Soren will kill me whether I go to prison or not. So why shouldn't I take you with me? My heart was pounding, but my voice came out steady. Because killing me won't save you. The evidence is already with the FBI. They have everything. Killing me only adds another charge. At least I'll have the satisfaction. The blade pressed harder. I felt a thin sting, warmth trickling down my neck. Not deep, not yet, but he was desperate enough to go further. Tristan, I forced myself to stay calm. Think about Camille. She's pregnant. Did you know that? She's carrying your child. If you do this, if you kill me, you'll destroy her. She'll lose her mother and her husband in the same night. Is that what you want for the mother of your child? Something shifted in his eyes. The mention of Camille, the baby. It got through to him in a way nothing else had. She doesn't have to know, he said, but his voice wavered. We could figure something out. I could disappear, start over somewhere else, and leave your child to grow up without a father? The way you grew up? It was a guess, based on the fragments Edmund had told me about Tristan's background. But it landed. I saw the impact in the way his grip loosened, the way his breath caught. You don't know anything about my father. I know he was cruel. I know he made you feel worthless. I know you spent your whole life trying to prove you were better than where you came from. I turned slowly, carefully, until I was facing him. The letter opener was still at my throat, but his hand was trembling now. You're not a monster, Tristan. You made terrible choices, desperate choices, but you're not beyond redemption. Help us bring down Soren. Testify against him. Show Camille that underneath all the lies, there's still something worth saving. Tears were streaming down his face. This man who had killed my husband, who had tried to kill me, was crying like a lost child. She'll never forgive me. Maybe not. But at least she'll know you tried to do one right thing in the end. At least your child will grow up knowing their father found his courage when it mattered most. The letter opener clattered to the floor. Tristan crumpled. He sank to his knees on Theodore's study carpet, his shoulders shaking with sobs. All the charm, all the calculation, stripped away to reveal the broken man underneath. I didn't want to kill him, he choked out. Theodore, I mean. I just needed more time. I thought if I could get control of the money, I could pay Soren off, I could fix everything. But Theodore found out. He was going to tell Camille. He was going to destroy everything I'd built. So you killed him. Soren's people, they gave me the drug. They told me how to use it. I just needed to inject it into his arm while he slept. He never even woke up. Tristan looked up at me, his face ravaged with guilt. I loved him, Harriet. Theodore was kind to me. He was the closest thing to a real father I'd ever had, and I murdered him for money. The front door burst open. Heavy footsteps thundered through the house, voices shouting identification. FBI. I heard Agent Torres commanding Tristan to get on the ground, heard the click of handcuffs closing around his wrists, but I barely registered any of it. I was staring at the letter opener on the floor, the silver tarnished with a few drops of my blood. Theodore's letter opener. The one he'd used every day for 15 years. He was gone. Nothing would bring him back. Not evidence, not confessions, not justice. But justice would come anyway. Mrs. Wyndham? Agent Torres was beside me, her hand on my arm. Are you hurt? We need to get that cut looked at. I'm fine. My voice sounded far away. Where's Camille? Agents intercepted her on her way home. She's safe. She's asking for you. I nodded, still unable to look away from the letter opener. Then I bent down, slowly, and picked it up. The silver was cold in my palm, familiar and strange at the same time. Mrs. Wyndham, that's evidence. I know. I just needed to hold it for a moment. I turned to Torres, pressing the opener into her gloved hand. Theodore gave me this. On our 20th anniversary, he used it every day. Torres's expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss. Both losses. Both losses. Theodore, gone forever. And now Camille's marriage, her happiness, her faith in the man she loved. All of it destroyed by the truth. They led Tristan out in handcuffs. He didn't struggle, didn't protest. He moved like a man already dead, his eyes vacant, his shoulders slumped. As he passed me, he stopped. Tell Camille I'm sorry. Tell her the love was real, even if nothing else was. I said nothing. What was there to say? Sorry wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. After they took him away, I walked through the house alone. The FBI had set up a command post in the living room, agents talking urgently into phones, coordinating the raid on Soren's operation. Edmund found me in the kitchen, staring out the window at the garden Theodore had planted 20 years ago. "It's over," he said quietly. "No, it's just beginning. The trial, the testimony, the publicity. And Camille." I pressed my palm against the cool glass. "I have to tell my daughter that her husband murdered her father, that her whole marriage was a lie. How do I do that, Edmund? How do I break her heart like that? The same way you've done everything else, with honesty, with love, with strength." I turned to look at him. This man who had been a stranger 6 weeks ago, who had saved my life with $300 and a whispered warning. "Thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. We still have to bring down Soren." "Tristan's confession is just the beginning." I nodded. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time since that night at the restaurant, I felt something other than fear. I felt hope. Outside, a car pulled into the driveway. Camille. I watched her step out, watched the confusion on her face as she took in the FBI vehicles, the agents swarming her childhood home. She looked so young, so vulnerable, so much like the little girl who used to run to me with scraped knees and broken toys, trusting me to fix everything. I couldn't fix this, but I could be there for her. I could hold her while her world fell apart. That was all any mother could do. I walked to the front door and opened it. Camille saw me, and her face crumpled with relief and terror. "Mom, what's happening? Where's Tristan?" I held out my arms, and my daughter ran into them like she was 5 years old again. "I'm here," I whispered into her hair. "I'm here, baby, and I have something I need to tell you." I told Camille everything that night. We sat together on her childhood bed, the one with the white iron frame that Theodore had painted himself when she was 3. She listened without interrupting as I laid out the whole terrible story, the gambling debts, Victor Soren, the safe deposit box and what it contained, Theodore's letter, the one he'd written knowing he might not survive to deliver it himself. When I told her how her father died, she didn't scream or cry. She just went very still, like something inside her had frozen solid. "He knew," she whispered. "Dad knew what Tristan was, and he died trying to protect us. Yes, and I married him anyway. I brought him into our family. I defended him every time you tried to warn me." Her voice cracked. "This is my fault." "No." I took her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. "This is Tristan's fault. This is Soren's fault. You fell in love with a man who lied about who he was. That doesn't make you guilty. That makes you a victim, just like the rest of us. I'm pregnant with his child, Mom. I'm carrying the baby of the man who murdered my father." It was the first time she'd said it out loud. The pregnancy she'd been hiding for weeks, waiting for the right moment to share her joy. Now that joy was poisoned forever. "That baby is innocent," I said firmly. "That baby is half you, half Wyndham, half the best parts of a family that goes back generations. Whatever Tristan did, it doesn't define your child. You get to decide what kind of mother you're going to be. And I know exactly what kind you'll be, the best kind. The kind who loves fiercely and protects absolutely." Camille broke then. She collapsed against me, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I held her the way I'd held her when she was small, when nightmares woke her in the dark, when the world seemed too big and too frightening. "I've got you," I murmured. "I've got you, baby. We're going to get through this together." The weeks that followed were brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. Tristan's arrest made national news. Financial consultant charged with murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy. The connection to Victor Soren turned it into an organized crime story that dominated headlines for days. Reporters camped outside our house. Old friends called with condolences that felt more like curiosity. The gallery clients I'd worked with for decades suddenly had urgent questions about my mental state, my judgment, my fitness to manage my own affairs. I weathered it all. What choice did I have? Tristan cooperated fully with the FBI. Whatever remnant of conscience remained in him, Camille's pregnancy had awakened it. He provided testimony, documents, recordings, everything he knew about Soren's operation, names and dates and account numbers that unraveled a criminal empire spanning 3 decades. Victor Soren was arrested in a coordinated raid that made Tristan's arrest look like a traffic stop. 12 locations across 4 states, 47 arrests in total. The news called it one of the largest organized crime takedowns in New England history. I watched the coverage from my living room, Edmund sitting beside me. Soren's face filled the screen, that cold, aristocratic bearing now stripped away by handcuffs and a perp walk. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. "It's over," Edmund said. "Really over this time." "Is it?" I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. Theodore is still dead. Camille's marriage is destroyed. Her child will grow up knowing their father is a murderer. Those things are true. But Soren can't hurt anyone else. Tristan will spend the rest of his life in prison. And you and Camille are alive. Edmund turned to look at me. Theodore would call that a victory. Would he? I wondered. My husband had always been the optimist between us, the one who saw silver linings where I saw only clouds. He would have found something redemptive in all this pain. Some meaning, some purpose. I wasn't there yet. Maybe I never would be. The trial took 8 months. I testified 3 times, recounting the dinner at Le Cygne, the weeks hiding in Cape Cod, the confrontation in Theodore's study. Each time, I looked at Tristan across the courtroom, searching for some trace of the charming man my daughter had married. He was gone. The Tristan who sat at the defense table was hollow, aged beyond his years. He pleaded guilty to all charges, life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the sentence was read, he didn't react at all. Camille didn't attend the trial. Her doctor had put her on bed rest in her 3rd trimester, complications from stress and grief. I spent those months shuttling between the courthouse and her bedroom, bringing her meals she barely touched, reading to her from books she barely heard. "I keep dreaming about him," she told me one night, her hand resting on her swollen belly. Not Tristan the murderer, Tristan the man I fell in love with. The one who brought me flowers for no reason, who stayed up all night with me when I was sick. Was any of it real? Or was I in love with a ghost? I didn't have an answer. I'm not sure there was one. Theodore Edmund Wyndham was born on a rainy April morning, 7 pounds and 6 ounces of squalling, red-faced fury. I was in the delivery room when he arrived, holding Camille's hand, watching my grandson take his first breath. He had Theodore's eyes, that same warm brown, flecked with gold. When the nurse placed him in Camille's arms, my daughter looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. "He's perfect," she whispered. "Mom, he's absolutely perfect." "Yes," I agreed, tears streaming down my face. "He is." In that moment, I understood something I hadn't been able to grasp before. Life goes on. Not because we want it to, not because we're ready, but because that's what life does. It persists. It insists. It finds a way forward through the wreckage of everything we've lost. My grandson was that way forward. Not a replacement for Theodore, not a redemption of Tristan's sins, but something entirely new. A chance to build something beautiful from the ashes. Edmund Hartley became a regular fixture in our lives. He came for Sunday dinners, always arriving with flowers for Camille and increasingly elaborate toys for the baby. He'd been estranged from his own daughter for 15 years, a wound that never fully healed. We became the family he'd lost. He became the friend I desperately needed. "You know what Theodore would say about all this?" Edmund asked one evening, watching little Teddy sleep in his bassinet. "Tell me." "He'd say the only real tragedy is a story without love. And this story has plenty of love. Complicated, painful, imperfect love, but love all the same." I thought about that for a long time. Theodore had always believed in the power of love to transcend circumstances. He'd loved me through my worst moments, my darkest fears, my most stubborn failures. He'd loved Camille with a devotion that had ultimately cost him his life. And now Camille loved her son with that same fierce, protective intensity. The cycle continued. On the 1st anniversary of Theodore's death, we held a small memorial in the garden he'd planted. Just Camille, Edmund, and me, standing among the roses that were finally blooming after a hard winter. Teddy slept in my arms, oblivious to the significance of the day. "I miss him," Camille said softly. "Every single day. So do I. Do you think he knows? Somehow, wherever he is, do you think he knows we're okay?" I looked at my daughter, at my grandson, at the home Theodore and I had built together, the house where we'd raised our family, weathered our storms, loved each other through 33 years of marriage. I think he knows, I said, and I think he's proud of us. Camille leaned her head against my shoulder. Edmund stood quietly beside us, and for a moment, standing in that garden with 3 generations of love surrounding me, I felt something I hadn't felt since the night I climbed through that bathroom window. Peace. Not happiness, not yet. That would come later, in small moments and unexpected joys. But peace, the quiet certainty that we had survived the worst, and that whatever came next, we would face it together. Tristan Kincaid had tried to destroy my family. He had killed my husband, stolen my sense of safety, shattered my daughter's heart. But he had failed in the end, because the Wyndham women were stronger than he knew. We always had been. Theodore's letter still sits in my jewelry box, worn soft from reading. Some nights when I can't sleep, I take it out and trace his handwriting with my fingers. Tell Camille I loved her more than she ever knew, and tell yourself the same thing, my darling. I do, Theodore, every single day, and I always will.